Hello, so this video is going to talk about getting a Express server running on your local computer and some of the features of this Express server. So what I'm going to do is, for reference, this is going to be code taken from this site right here, my GitHub site. This is going to be the file. Let's go back over here. I'll take a raw look at this guy. I'm going to copy and paste this into my Sublime editor right here, and I'm going to save this in web. What I'm going to do over here is I'm going to make a new project for myself. I'm going to make myself a new folder. So in Windows right now, I'm making a new folder, and I'm going to call this guy Project 2. And inside of Project 2, I'm going to make something called index.js. So what we've got right now is, in order to get the server up and running, so we've seen the server getting running before. There are going to be slight modifications to actually make this run on a local machine. So right now we're making things run on a local machine. So if you're familiar with Python, what we have over here is an import statement, right? So this import statement tells Node to import the package named Express. And this assumes that you have already installed the package Express, but what this is going to do is going to look for one of three things. It's going to look for either a file named index.js in a folder named Express in the directory node modules. So ULES. So this is the first thing it's going to look for. The second thing that it could look for is a file named index.js in a folder named Express in the current directory. And the third thing that we could be looking for is a file named express.js. So let's go over here, change this around, express.js in the current directory. So all of these things, if any one of these exists, I forget the exact order, but if any one of these exists, this require will effectively import them in the same way that Python would do something like import numpy as np, right? So this is to, if there were an equivalent here, we'd be saying require numpy, and then this would be np over here. So the fact that they're both named Express over here is sort of indication the name of the package is Express. So I am going to remove this, and I'm going to take this and put this code right here, put it above, comment that out. So again, what we have over here is we're importing Express, and this Express is going to be called. There's a presumption that this is going to have some class that can be called, and we're going to make something called app. And so this app is going to be our class object that represents our server. This server is going to be configured by commands that go through over the rest of the course of this file. So previously, I had set a port over here, and what ports do are allow different network connections and whatever the computer that's running this thing. Many times you'll see port 3000. If you're familiar with some games, you have different ports for network connections to route incoming and outgoing data. This is going to route incoming data to port 80, which is the default HTTP port on computers. So basically what it's going to do is if somebody goes to the default HTTP port, which is the default port that we use by like a browser, the browser kind of looks to this port for HTTP requests. That this whatever app is going to be listening on that end product. So let's go over here into this folder, and I think where did I just have this folder defined? I'm going to pause this for a second. So I'm going to go back into the folder where this is defined. In Sublime, I can go to open the containing folder, and we're going to see over here. And I'm going to open the PowerShell, which on Windows is really just the terminal. So we've got this terminal that's going to come on up over here, and I can put my project on the left side, and I'm going to put my terminal on the right side over here. So in order to have the Express package actually imported properly, right? So in order for this package to be found, we said there were certain conditions that need to be met. Well, in order to make those conditions actually happen, I'm going to need to run the npm installer. So I'm going to say npm install express. And what this is going to do is it's going to download Express into a folder. It's going to create the node modules folder inside of here, and you'll see that there's an Express folder inside of there, and there's going to be a file named index.js, and this is going to allow index.js to actually run. Now, at this point, we're going to get this server started, and if I were to just kind of step through what's involved in getting a server started over here, we can comment this stuff out. Don't worry about this for the moment. Basically, what I'm going to do is I am going to tell the app being our server object, to listen to that incoming port. And if any incoming ports get called, we're going to define routes and behavior to happen with particular routes. So if the user lands at the default route for this particular page, we're going to run this anonymous function that we have defined inside of here. So this function will be run if the user lands on the page. So when, oops, nope, don't want to install, already installed. So in order to start my server, I'm going to type node index.js. That's going to start this on port 80. That message was part of the callback function for when the server was started over here. And what this means at this point for us, if we go back to the code, is that I have a server running on my local machine right here, which has one of two names. I can call it localhost. And we got this result, hola. And we can also go to 127.0.0.1. That's computer speak for the same site over here. If so what's actually happening is when the user lands on the page, this function gets called. So when I'm coding, I predefine the behavior that is going to happen when particular endpoints associated with the sites are reached. So this is the default endpoint. Whenever somebody lands on this page, run this function. Perhaps it's easier to look at it this way. So I'm going to call this function landing right here, and then I'm going to say this. So at line 26, I'm assigning the function landing to be called whenever somebody lands on the default page. I can make this change and we can see, to demonstrate, let's say this hi there, right? So I save this, and when I run again, my server has started. I'm going to reload the page and we get hi there. So what's kind of interesting about this is that we've got this, we can talk a little bit about what rec and res mean in a moment. Basically, this function is called whenever somebody lands at the path defined here. So to verify that this function is being called every single time, I can say console.log a user has landed. Oops. And I'm going to restart my server. I'm going to go to the page, and every time I reload this page, boom, a user has landed. A user has landed. So whenever somebody's landing at the page, we're getting indication that a user has actually landed at the site over here. So what is rec and what is res? Right? What is rec and what is res? So by convention, we have these two sort of horrible names associated with parameters that are called in Express objects. So rec is information associated with the incoming request, and res is an object. These are both objects that are associated with the outgoing request. These objects are both pre-populated by Express as part of the callback system when you land on a particular page and you get routed to a particular endpoint. So rec is going to have information associated with the user's browser, the user's IP address, and so on and so forth. And so if I were to actually go ahead and log the rec object, and let's restart our server over here, when a user lands on this page, you get this giant object that comes in, and there's all sorts of information that defines information associated that carries information associated with the incoming request. Embedded inside of here are going to be things like, where is the user coming from? So here's the host. They're coming from 127.0.0.1. Their browser, what sort of browser are they working on? Yeah, there's information that's associated with that as well. Now, it turns out that I also can have an IP address that's associated with my local network address. So I could also, this is the address of my 127.0.0.1 is the address of my computer in terms of my computer, but 192.168.1.33 is actually the address of my computer in terms of the local network that we have going on over here. So I found this by looking at my router. You can also do this if you run, let's clear this. If you have a Windows terminal, the command is ipconfig, I believe, and you can see you get your IP address on the local router. So I know I'm 1.33. If I go to this address from anywhere in my local network, which is at my home Wi-Fi, and I have my server running over here, right? So node index.js. So I'm not going to reload this page, but I am going to go to this on my phone, and I'm going to see information associated with the request coming in from my phone. And we're going to see that the host is 192.168.1.33. We should be able to figure out where this came from. Linux came from Linux, Android 7.1, Pixel XL. That's who set us up. And I would imagine that inside of here would be the IP address for my phone as well. So this rec object, right? This is talking about the rec object. The rec object contains information associated with the incoming request. The res object contains information that's going to be related to the outgoing response that's sent back. So we can do things like res.send, res.send file, res.render. Basically, you know, notice this isn't a return. This is an object. This is an instruction to the res object to do something on the res object. So in this case, we're just sending a string to the res object, as we saw before. If I define additional endpoints, so for example, we saw 192.1, 33. I'm going to clear this terminal. So I'm going to cancel out of this, and I'm going to CLS clear my terminal. Let's restart my server over here. And if I reload the page, and let's go to /foo, okay, so I requested the foo page. So this was the callback function that was run. In line 29 over here, I assign this function to be run when the user lands at foo. And then whenever somebody lands at /foo, they're going to get this message, requested foo, sent out to them. So this is the sort of basics of what you're triggering when you land on a page, and how Express is doing some very basic responses over here. There are some additional things that you can do. So let's say you have a file. You can do a res.send file. So let's say I have something that looks like this. Let's say I get res.send, and then I say like foo.jpeg. I could do a res.send file, and then if I put a path inside of here, I could get a file. So this is going to require that I would put an image inside of this path. So hold on one second, and I'll get an image over there. Actually, before I send a file over here, let's take a moment just to see what's going on over here. So I think it's important to see that what the server does is what you tell the server to do. So if I say, foo.jpeg over here, JPG, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to restart my server. I'm going to cancel it, and I'm going to restart my server. If I were to go over to foo.jpeg, excuse me, if I haven't typed it in properly, it's going to tell me I can't get it. But if I type foo.jpeg, in this case, it just tells me foo.jpeg. Intuitively, you may be saying, well, if there's in my folder that we had over here, so in my project, I had, let's say I were to make something called foo.jpeg. why wouldn't we be able to send foo.jpg? So, for example, if I were to cut and paste a picture into here, and I'm going to call this thing foo.jpg, shouldn't my server then send foo.jpg? Well, the answer, is going to be no, it's not going to send foo.jpg. The only thing it's going to send is what you tell it to send right here. Let's take this one step further, and let's say I rename this image to be something along the lines of dog.jpg, and so I've got a dog over here. Okay, I've got dog.jpg, and this is in the same folder as index.js, so clearly, this is in a meaningful spot. If I were to restart my server, if I go to some place called dog.jpg, am I going to get a picture dog.jpg? The answer is no, we can't get a dog.jpg. The only way we're going to get a dog.jpg is if we actually set it up so that Express is going to go ahead and get dog.jpg. So there are a couple ways that we can actually make dog.jpg show up over here. The first way would be to do a res.send file. And before we get into res.send file, there's something that you're going to need to know about this. So intuitively, again, you might want to say like, okay, well, let's just send the file dog.jpg, because I know this exists, right? Res.send file dog.jpg, restart server, let's see what happens. Kill server, restart server. I'm going to go over here, and what happens? Cannot get dog.jpg. Did I define this? No, foo.jpg, that's why. If you get a cannot get, it's because you haven't just defined the endpoint. Foo.jpg. Oh man, Express is not happy. This is, okay, so it says path must be absolute. So we've got this path over here, and I didn't give it an absolute path to send this file. Okay, I didn't give it the full path. So inside of Node, there's actually a convenient little string that we're going to need to see, that we're going to need to use here. So this is still going to generate errors, but what I'm going to show you is I'm going to put a console.log statement in here, and I'm going to show you this dir name variable. So when I restart my server, and we got some errors over here. So when I restart my server, I've got a server running. I'm going to reload this page. I got an error. Okay, all this stuff. But in addition to the error, I actually did see a path. See users, PC Cossack Work Curriculum Web Project 2. So this is the full path associated with dir name. And now I'm getting an error that says, okay, you have to be absolute or specify root to send the file. Well, what we need to do is I actually need to use the full path. And dir name is going to help me create that full path. In order to concatenate paths, the mechanism that I suggest is to use a tool, a library called path. And this is a built-in library that you don't have to install. I'm going to call this guy var path is equal to, I like to have my equal signs lined up, require path. So this is a built-in tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var dog path is equal to, and this is a method from the path library, path.join. And what this guy is going to do is join path's name. So I'm going to join dir name and dog.jpg. This is going to concatenate these two paths together. And if I send the file dog path, that should be the complete path to this dog picture. Go back, restart server, kill server, restart server. And if we go over here, what do we get? We get the dog picture. Okay, so we got the dog picture. That's lovely. We got it from going to foo.jpg in this case. So if you're going to send files, it's not often that we do send files. That's not a common way of actually sending like index.html and stuff like that. But if you are going to send files, this is something that you can do. The next parameter to look at over here is this guy. So we've got this not a search thing. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go over to Uncle Google, and we're going to open up a new tab here. And if I go into the Google and I make like a query, so here let's say like NFL playoffs, right? And I'm doing this search, and he's thinking about it. So I type this in, and normally we just look at all this wonderful stuff up here, but it's important to take a look at what Google has actually done with that URL, so we can we can get we can really there's some magic going on here, and I think it's important that you look at this thing. So I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm just going to look at this thing. So we went to google.com/search, but Google actually injected all these other little bits and bots of information as key value pairs into that query. So there was a script that ran before we went off, and it said okay, and the query was Q is equal to NFL playoffs, and RLS is equal to this, and OQ was equal to this. So we have key value, and AX is equal to Chrome, whatever, and source ID is Chrome, and IE is U2FA. Okay, wow, there's all this stuff going on. So this is basically a form. There's form information inside of here, and we can get that form information in the pages that we visit. So we can add additional information, and D is equal to 1. I can add additional information into my browser, and basically this is a way of sending information to the server. This is called the GET mechanism of sending additional information to the server. You can capture this information through using the rec object, and in particular the rec.query object. So what we're going to do over here is we can actually look and see what the query parameters are. There's an object that's built into rec called rec.query. And so I can start us off by saying console.log rec.query. And we're going to go to rec.notasearch. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to restart my server, right? Node index.js. And here we're going to go to not a search. And query parameter undefined. And we can see over here that the rec.query object was an empty object. If I were to say in n is equal to 1, let's see what we get. Come on, buddy. Really? Okay. And D is equal to 2. This is slightly surprising. Oh, okay. Oh, the buffer was a little bit slow. Those should have been responding more or less right away over here. Okay, let's try reloading this page. Oh, you know why? This is going really slowly. Let's change our address. Let's get off of my network, and let's go to 127.0.0.1 over here. Okay, so here we go. Ay. Let's kill this server. Oh, lots of reloads came in. What I'm going to do over here, let's change this around. Instead of actually looking at this full object, I'm going to kill off my server. I'm going to restart my server, sort of clear out this buffer, and I'm going to go over to 127.0.0.1/not a search. Okay, so there was our object, and now let's try putting in information. And R is equal to 1. Okay, there's R is equal to 1. This is a little bit more linear. And Q is equal to 12. Oh, Q is equal to 12. Look at that. So our query parameter object was actually populated this time, and we could see data that was inside of there. You can check to see if something is present. The way to check to see if a query parameter has been entered is the in operator, right? So I can actually look at the keys. So a couple things to look at, right? If I want to know the keys, I could say console.log. I could use the object.keys method, and that is going to return the list of all of the keys in rec.query. And then what we can also say, What we can also say back in here is we can look to see, to check if, so this is going to give us an array of keys, but what we can do is we can look to see, we use the in operator. So I could say q in rec.query, and this is a true false statement that will tell us whether or not the user has put in a query named q. And so what we're going to do is run our server again over here. Let's go back and take a look at this, and there will be expecting some information now. So I've got my object, the keys of my object, and false. Let's say another ampersand, and this is a key. Quer is equal to foo. So here is our object this time. R is equal to quer. He's in there. Nope, that's false. And then let's sort of finish this out. And Q is equal to Paul. Okay, there we go. True. The key Q was inside of there. So you can definitely check to see if you have keys inside of objects relatively straightforwardly by using the in operator, right? So this will tell you whether or not a key is inside of a value. So this should be enough to sort of get you started with some basic stuff as far as getting basic Express servers and pages loaded, etc.